Hey everybody, Rob Maurer here. I am the host of the Tesla Daily YouTube channel and podcast. And today for Audience Driven, I just wanted to walk you through a little bit of how I've built my channel and my podcast and my audience and how that's grown over time and some of the different phases through the growth stage. And then what I think is really interesting, sort of a plateau phase, which I'm in right now. So not a lot of content creators talk about that very often. So I thought it might be an interesting topic for us to go into a little bit of detail on after we walk through just sort of the formation of how this has all been built for me. So thanks for joining me. I am going to flip over to just the browser here and we'll take a look. First, I just want to walk you guys through a little bit of background on, what Tesla Daily is, how it came to be, just so you kind of are familiar with that. So here what you're seeing is the Apple Podcast page. I started a Tesla Daily about 4 years ago. And as you can see here, it's now up to 916 episodes over that period of time. So I've been able to build this thing really consistently over the last 4 years. Somewhere in the midpoint, about 2 years into, actually exactly 2 years into this audio podcast, I decided to quit my job, take it full time, and branch out in terms of the content I was providing. So the reason I was able to do that is not from ad revenue from the podcast or anything like that. It was because I had established such an amazing supportive audience that I'm extremely grateful for. And they were able to support me enough on Patreon that I felt like I was at the point where I could maybe make that leap. So today you can see here, I'm just over 2,000 amazing listeners that are supporting me on Patreon. And really there's no exclusive content there. There's no real benefit for them aside from maybe having a little bit better of a chance of connecting with me via email or something like that. But there's no exclusive content there. It's really just them wanting to support me for the value that I've given to them. So when we think about building an audience and, I think the name of the summit is Audience Driven. And I think that's a perfectly apt name. For me, it's always come down to how do I provide value for my audience? And for me, with the Tesla Daily podcast, it's pretty simple because, I am the customer. I started Tesla Daily because it was something that I wanted. And just to give a little more context on that, it's a Tesla podcast. I talk about all things about the company, but I approach it from a business perspective and an investor perspective. And around the time that I was starting this 4 years ago, there really wasn't anything out there that was doing that. There were a few other really great Tesla podcasts, but they were more focused on just kind of like the vehicles and from a customer perspective. And they weren't very frequent. And, even today, things move super quickly in the Tesla space. So I was looking for something that was a little bit more frequent. I figured, hey, I'm spending all this time learning about this company. Why don't I take that time and, 3-5 minutes a day, just say what I've been able to learn that day and help people that maybe don't have the time to spend a couple of hours reading about this, help them understand what's going on, what's important, and what's not. Sorry, my throat is a little dry. Just give me a sec here. Pardon me on that. So anyway, I've always kind of approached it from just how can I make things better for my listener? How can I provide them value? I've never had ads in the audio podcast. Really, it's always been just listener supported right from the start. And I think the audience has appreciated that, respected that. I've been able to show how consistent I've been over time. I've been able to provide, a really clear value proposition for the listener of, hey, I'm going to go on this podcast. I know it's going to be very efficient. I'm going to get the most important information and then we're going to wrap it up. And then Rob's going to be there the very next day providing the exact same thing. And over time, the listeners come to really respect that. They come to really respect my respect of their time. So I think that's one of the things that has allowed me to be successful in terms of just harboring that supportive relationship with my audience that has helped me grow and eventually helped me take this full time. So anyway, I have this Patreon thing up here because this is what I wrote a couple of years back when I was, making that difficult decision to leave my job, which I did like, and it was a good position, but, it just, the podcast kind of called to me and I felt like I needed to make a choice and my choice was Tesla Daily. So, at that time, what I wrote here is, we need content that can do more. I want to bring the same rational, authentic, anti-sensational, anti-clickbait mindset that I approach this podcast with every day to a broader audience through different mediums. I want to make a bigger impact. I want us to make a bigger impact. If you want to support independent media that's more than just clicks, this is your chance to do that. I'm taking a leap here. I need you to take a step with me for this to be sustainable. And I'll do everything that I can to make your support worthwhile. It'd mean the world to me. And I really do mean all those words. And I think, in the last 2 years since making that decision, I've demonstrated that. So what that did is, let's see, make sure we've got this correct here. Yeah, so that allowed me to free up enough time to take this audio podcast and make it into a YouTube channel. So you can see here, lifetime. So I started making videos it would have been November of 2019, I think. So a couple of years back now, almost. And over that period of time, 34 million views here. And with the audio feed, over those 4 years, more than 40 million downloads combined here. So really taking it to the YouTube channel really helped do what I was trying to do in terms of getting this valuable information out to more people. Podcast searchability, shareability, like I say in that post, it's just really bad. Having content on YouTube allows YouTube to put it in front of people that may watch it, and hopefully then, subscribe and find the channel valuable, and things can grow from there. So that's really what the intent was. Listener support allowed me to have the time to be able to do that. Now I've hired an editor. So basically what I do is I record the audio podcast and then I work with my editor so that, this is a daily thing and we're putting out 10, 15 minute videos every single day, every single weekday at least. And it takes a lot of work. So I have the editor. He's doing a great job helping me out, getting the audio podcast into a video format. That's obviously going to be part of the barrier to entry of YouTube. For a while there, I just put the audio podcast on YouTube and it did fine, but people are really looking for those videos on YouTube. So obviously it's been successful over that period of time. The other thing that I've done is just added, I've started contributing a little bit of writing to the Streetcom. So as I said, Tesla Daily is kind of an investment focused podcast. They at one point reached out and asked if I'd be interested in, a little bit of collaborating here. And it's really like YouTube, it's just a revenue share where I'll, post my content, and I'm still completely independent and things like that. I really just viewed it as a way to try to get my content and, the value that hopefully I'm providing out to more people, that maybe is a little bit different demographic than what I could find in the audio podcast or with YouTube videos alone. So that's been built up over time as well. And really those are kind of the three ways that I approach content right now. And then also obviously on Twitter, that's kind of really the only thing I do for social media. I certainly could do things on Facebook, do things on TikTok, wherever else. But for me, it really comes down to where am I providing the best value? And I think for the time that I have, YouTube and the podcast and the occasional article is really the best way for me to do that. So TikTok and things like that, maybe they'd add some value for me or for my listeners, but maybe not necessarily worth the time. But anyway, the point is that it's good to try to find ways that you can build a base. Start with something simple. Start with just an audio podcast. Maybe you're not comfortable on camera. I certainly, one of the reasons I actually started the podcast was to become a better speaker. And I figured, hey, if I do this every single day, that's probably a good step in terms of something that might help. So anyway, start with something small. Maybe do something once a week. And I think the biggest thing that I'm sure all of you have heard a million times by now is you got to be consistent. For me, how I approach content creation is you got to provide value and you got to be consistent. If you can do both of those things and you can feel good that you are really providing value, and obviously consistency, that's just, pretty easy check there. If you can do both of those things, you're starting off on the right foot. Your chances of success are good. You obviously have to find the right, niche or area or whatever. And for me, obviously Tesla's been a good one because the interest has grown over time. But yeah, if you approach it from that mindset of what's going to provide value, I think that's the best way to build an audience that can be sustaining. You're not just, making one video that happens to go viral and then no one ever wants to hear anything from you again, because, you're not necessarily providing value. Maybe you had that one hit, but if you can provide value and just be consistent with it, that's going to help you be in something that is more sustainable. Okay, so I think that's covered most of like how I've built the audience. I'm sure I'm missing things, but one of the things that I really wanted to spend a little bit of time on here, which is a little bit rare, is just, once you go through a period of growth, how to manage through maybe that slowing down a little bit. So here I just want to walk you through a little bit of the YouTube analytics from my channel. So this is just views from back when I started in November 2019. So again, I did have my podcast listeners, just the audio listeners, a way, way smaller audience than what I have now from YouTube, but definitely did give me a little bit of a head start. So started making those videos back in November, probably posted like 1 or 2 in November, 382 views. I get to December, I actually posted my first video content in December 2019. It was an interview with a Wall Street analyst. I think it got like 30,000 views or something like that. And definitely subscribers, started coming in at that point. And it really just grew consistently from there. More and more people kept finding the channel. And pretty much every month I was growing, maybe a little bit of a down month there in June. But really fun period of time. I quit my job somewhere right around here back in, August of 2019, and then got into this really, really nice growth period on YouTube, where it just kind of every single month, more and more and more and more. So it was a lot of fun. And then you kind of get over here into, the latter half of 2020, early 2021. So really kind of the last, really the last year for me. And you can see that the growth has kind of slowed down, and it's been, stable, but it feels a lot different being in this period of time than it did in this period of time, because when you're in this growth stage, it's kind of like, okay, the sky is the limit. You don't really know where that plateau is going to be. And then when you hit the plateau, it's like, shoot, like that's where I am. And you start thinking about, okay, how do you advance from there? How do you take the next leg up? And how do you kind of get back to that growth that you once had? So it becomes a very difficult, psychological struggle, I guess. And, obviously you have to consider the proper context. Like, I'm very happy with these numbers, but just as I said, the feeling when you get into this sort of plateau, it's a very different feeling. And the concern starts to creep in of, okay, like maybe this was just a nice period of time, and maybe, there's more competition, maybe there's less interest, and maybe this all fades, and you have a month that, starts to go down a little bit. Like here, August was my lowest number of views since, more than a year ago. And if you look at these kind of 4 months just in isolation, you start to see a little bit of a downslope, and it doesn't feel as good as those growth days do. So I guess my point here is that at some point, I think every content creator goes through periods of time. Every entrepreneur, really, maybe not everyone, but a lot of entrepreneurs are going to go through these periods of time where you have these, plateaus or whatever else you want to call them, declines, whatever. And I think it's kind of interesting to just talk about it as I'm in that state right now. So just to give a little bit more context on the analytics here, and kind of that feeling that I was talking about of, maybe this is starting to decline a little bit. Here's the subscriber numbers. So that was the views. Here's monthly subscriber numbers back since the channel creation. November got 82, 3,000 there in December, another 6,000. So I'm up to maybe 10,000 there by the start of 2020. See a little bit of a dip there. But then, throughout the rest of the year, those subscriber numbers, not only is my subscription base growing, but my growth is growing. Like, I'm getting more subscribers every single month than before. And again, that feels awesome. And you're kind of just looking like, what if this continues? But then you get into this, 2020, 2021 time period, and it did not. So again, I'm very thankful for the audience that I have, but it feels different when And especially with YouTube putting the analytics right in your face all the time, where you come in and it shows your last 28-day numbers. And when you're looking at a period like this, that arrow is always down. You're always seeing fewer and fewer and fewer subscribers every month. And, you come in, and for me, I create content daily. You see that every single day for a year, and it doesn't feel great. just being completely honest there. So, going from 23,000 subscribers, new subscribers last August, to this August, 3,700. So, it's almost a 90% decline there, maybe 80% decline in new subscribers year over year. And then, kind of the same thing in September. And then we're in the midst of October right now. Obviously not a full month, but kind of the same level. So for me, it's really just about, and I guess real quick, the one other thing that I would add to that is that, again, in terms of YouTube, just kind of pushing the numbers in front of your face all the time. Those of you that do create content on YouTube, you can see the ranking of your last published video out of the last 10. So that again creates just this challenge in your mind of, okay, I always want my next video to be kind of like the best video. But then you can, during a period of time like this, you come in and maybe your last video is 7 out of 10 or 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10. And maybe 10 out of 10 can happen in, a few videos in a row. And again, it's a difficult thing to go through psychologically. So my advice, getting to it finally here, and not just complaining about things that, again, I'm very happy with where I'm at, but in terms of how to deal with things like this, certainly I'm no expert on it, but just sort of the approach that I try to take is, let's take a step back, just take a deep breath, again, appreciate what I do have, because what I do have is a great audience. And, if you could have told me when I quit my job that this is where I would be, no questions asked, I would be extremely happy with it. So, take a step back, remind myself of those things, remind myself of the success that I do have, even if the growth isn't there. Even just being able to maintain is an accomplishment in and of itself. So I have to kind of take a second to remind myself of those things, and then just kind of take a look around and realize the context of what I'm doing here. Like, the Tesla niche is not unlimited. Not every single person in the world is going to care enough about Tesla to watch Tesla Daily. So even though I want to keep growing, I have to understand there is a ceiling on that and appreciate that. And then if I look around at, other channels in the space, a lot of people are kind of capping out at, around that 200,000 level. There's probably like small, medium, large size Tesla content creators now. And in that large group, it's kind of, with maybe one or two exceptions, kind of capped around that 200,000 level. So that makes me feel like, okay, I'm not getting as many subscribers now because I have kind of hit that peak. And just to make sure I'm not like making excuses for myself, I think it's helpful to look at some external data too. So here, what I've got pulled up is Google Trends, and you can see that I've got Tesla and Tesla stock, because again, I talk a lot about the business. And this is going back just to provide some context on like 2018. So this is where I would have been, making the podcast, but not actually doing YouTube videos yet. And you can see search interest in Tesla stock, relative to where it is now is like a 1, pretty consistently throughout this period of time. We get into like November, of 2019, and it just so happened that Tesla did the Cybertruck unveiling, which I'm sure many of you have heard about. At that point, that's that big spike that we see here, generated a lot of interest in Tesla. And then from there, the stock really started taking off too. So right around the time I started making YouTube videos is right aligned with the spike in interest in both Tesla and specifically in Tesla stock, where you can see here, 2020, it's already sort of 5 to 10 times the amount of interest in Tesla stock that there was just 12 months ago. And that continues through 2020 as well. So you can see, some spikes in, September and August. If I look back at kind of my best months, look at subscribers here. And I did have some content that was driving this too, but, September, August, my two biggest increases in subscribers. And wouldn't you know it, interest in Tesla at that point in time was high. Then we fast forward here and look, it kind of looks pretty similar to how my channel has grown, right? Now we're indexing at a 5 here for Tesla stock versus back then it was at a 30. So search interest in Tesla stock is declined like 6x in that period of time, which really helps me understand that, okay, it's not just necessarily something that I am doing with my channel that's causing my growth to slow down. I'm probably just reaching the ceiling on my audience, and my audience is it's certainly not growing as fast, just naturally, like interest in Tesla is not growing as fast naturally as it was during my sort of peak. And I've already captured a lot of the audience. So I think this is really helpful for me to just, again, take a deep breath, relax. And where this comes into play in terms of my actions is that you could sit there and you could say, oh, I'm not growing. Like I need to revise all, X, Y, and Z with my channel. I need to make better titles. I need to make better thumbnails. I need to spend more time on my content. But I'm already doing all those things, right? Like I'm already spending so much time creating my content, and it's always been this way. I've always put out the best product that I can. There's really nothing else that I feel like I can be doing to make better content. So then it's like thumbnails and titles. Like, okay, maybe I could spend more time on thumbnails. Is that really going to give me a good return on my time? And more importantly, is a better thumbnail really providing value for my audience? Probably not. If they click on it and the content's good, then, you could make an argument for it, but maybe I could be spending my time doing something that's going to actually add some more value to my audience. And then in terms of titles, sure, I could create more interesting titles and probably get more views on my channel, but that's never been the intent for me. Like I said in that Patreon post when I quit my job, like anti-sensational, anti-clickbait, naturally that's not going to lead to the highest click-through rates on YouTube. And that's just part of who I am. And I have accepted that. And I'm not going to, just because of a period of time here with not as much growth or not as many views, I'm not going to sacrifice my values to try and maintain or even grow the channel. It's just not what I'm going to do. So I think it's helpful to understand this sort of context to ground myself in those decisions and those choices that I'm making with my channel, if that makes sense. So then it's like, okay, well, if you're not going to do those things, then what do you do? And for me, again, it always comes back to the audience, right? So what can I actually do if I do have any extra time to provide value to the audience to maybe grow in a new way? Maybe I should start a different channel talking about a different stock, or maybe I should, diversify my content even more. Maybe I should start doing something like TikTok or something like that. So those are the kind of things that I'm thinking about more so than like how to actually make Tesla Daily grow into something more, because again, I think it's kind of at the point where it's about as good as it can be. And for me, my focus now is, okay, how do I take what I've built here and continue to provide even more and more value for my listeners? And that comes from understanding what they're looking for and understanding the skill set that I have that has proven to be valuable for them in the past, and how can I align those in sort of a new area. So I've got projects in the works. Unfortunately, I'm not ready to talk about those yet. So if you're interested, you'll just have to follow me, I guess. But I guess where all this is going is that this has all been part of the decision-making process, is really understanding the context behind what's happening with my channel, and that helping me have clarity of mind and clarity of thought for what direction to take next. Reflect on my values, reflect on the value that I provide to my listeners and what they may be interested, find overlap in those areas, and use that overlap to capitalize on the skill set that I have, which for me is, providing good content that's efficient, not clickbait. Maybe this presentation, not the most efficient, but not clickbait, grounded in truth, authenticity, really just trying to get good information out to more people. So those are the things I'm thinking about. Those are the things I want to do to be able to take like the next leg up in growth. And hopefully that'll be successful. And maybe a year from now we can check in on that and see how it's gone. But hopefully that helps provide a little bit of perspective. And, if there are people out there in this audience that are going through periods of time like that, hopefully me sharing my thoughts on that can can help you get through that process. Or if you're a newer content creator and you are still in that growth stage, hopefully when you do inevitably get to a period of time like this, hopefully this helps, ground you a little bit through that period of time as well. So that is where I'm going to wrap it up. If you are interested in, following me, you can find me on Twitter at Tesla Podcast. Or if you're interested in following the channel, you can do that at youtube.com/Tesla Daily, or obviously on any podcasting platform. So appreciate the time. Again, hope it was helpful. And thanks everybody for listening. I'll see you next time.